Hi everybody. Thanks for coming. My name's Mike. I wrote a book. It's called Sharing in the Groove. It's about the 90s jam band scene explosion, which was very big up here in the back then, still today. Um, and it's a huge oral history of that world. I talked to pretty much everybody that was involved. Phish and Dave Matthews and Widespread Panic and Modesty Martin and Wood, Mo. The list goes on and on. And I've been doing a little run of bookstores and breweries, and I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be here with Matt. We're gonna chit chat about the book. If there's any questions, happy to have a little Q&A at the end. And I actually brought this cassette deck and cassettes that I used to haul around in the 90s. I made these 30 years ago. And we have things to give away. If you can guess the song that I'm going to play, and it's incredibly stupid and incredibly fun. Incredibly fun prizes. I don't know if the game is going to work, but we'll try it. I do have books. I do have books for sale, and if you buy a book while supplies last, you can take a T-shirt too. I made tie-dyes. Yeah, it's super exclusive.
Yep, exactly.
So, Matt, what's going on?
Mike, I really appreciate the opportunity. And, Mike mentioned that he wrote this book, Sharing in the Groove. And I read it, and what a privilege it was to read it. Everything, and I just told this to Mike and a couple of the dudes up at the bar, everything I read in that book, this is what I said. I was there. I was at that show. I was at that festival. And it's really amazing if you read this book, it's first person accounts from all these dudes that Mike just said. And to hear what inspired them, and we'll get into that in a moment, but the inspiration was amazing. And this compilation that Mike's put together, I would say is the definitive jam band book. Mike, let's go, man.
Yeah, well, you heard it here. It's definitive. Yeah, I mean, look, it took I don't know 2 years to do. It's been done for about a year. It was really just a lot of hitting up people to see if they wanted to talk, and all of them pretty much did. This was an era in their life that was very coming of age for them, not only as people but as musicians. And so, I'm not going to say that they had, rose tinted glasses on all the time.
They did not.
But it was an era for them that set them on a path in their life that is still going strong today.
Absolutely.
A lot of these acts are still playing, if not all the time,
Some of
often
the time,
enough.
yeah.
And so it wasn't a huge twist of the wrist to get to talk about this.
Yeah.
The great thing too is the people on more behind the scenes, the managers, the roadies, the folks at the record labels. It felt that way for them too. This was a moment in their career, for the most part, that they were a part of, that was defining for them in their career. Mm-hmm. So they had very fond memories as well. And the last question I would ask would be, I don't know, man, like, who else should I talk to? And they would be like, oh, you got to talk to this person. You got to talk to this person. and I'd be like, oh yeah, that sounds great. And a lot of times these people were kind of hard to find. They weren't so out there on the internet. Maybe they had a Facebook page, but it was probably dormant. And like, look, I check Facebook messages, but a lot of people don't. And but they would just text them for me.
Yeah.
And they would just be like, hey, this dude Mike, he's writing this book. He would love to chit chat with you. Would you be down? And 9.9 times out of 10, they were like, yeah, 100%. So I could snowball it like that.
Yeah.
And that person would lead to the next person, and that person would lead to the next person. And and it was great. These people, not only do they have like fond memories of that time, they just had amazing insights that you can get in the book about how record labels were thinking, how radio stations were thinking, how they were thinking about the bands, and how they were thinking about the scene and the culture. Mm-hmm. There's a really great story from someone from Elektra in there, how he was in marketing and his boss was super mad at him and was like, this band keeps selling out Madison Square Garden, Phish. Why can't you make their CDs sell? Like, what is your there was a lot more explicits thrown in there, but so there was like this, there was like these tensions that were existing that these folks had to also navigate. And a big question is like that kind of like an undercurrent through the book is, what do you do? Do you stay true to your fans, or do you try to do something bigger? And at that time, it was radio and CD sales, and that sort of thing. So,
Mike, where it all started for me was back in 1983. My uncle took me to my first Grateful Dead concert. I was a metalhead up until that point, 14, 15 years old, AC/DC, Sabbath, all that great stuff. And I went to this Dead show in Hartford in 1983. And ironically enough, at the time, I didn't know it, but they played this tune called St. Stephen. And for any Deadhead who's here, St. Stephen is the holy grail of what you wanted to hear at a Dead show. I heard it. I didn't know what was going on, but what I sensed around me, I saw the people going wild. I saw laughter, I saw smiles and hugging and people just going wild. And at the end of the night, I said to my uncle, I go, what the hell just happened there? I go, I know something happened. It felt like, a peak of a big metal jam or something. He's like, Matt, they just played St. Stephen. When he said that to me, I had to really figure out, what did the Grateful Dead mean to me? Where was this going to take me? And this eventually gets to Mike. But the Grateful Dead opened the door for me to experience what a real jam band is all about. The Dead took things, they didn't take anything seriously. That was the biggest thing with the Dead. They didn't care about an album. What they cared about was, we need to be on the road for 80 shows this year. That's how we get the music to the people. So fast forward all the way up to when Jerry kicked the bucket in 95 because of his drug addiction and his poor health, which is really unfortunate. Jerry kicked the bucket at 52, 53 years old. That man had 25 years of music, as we see with Bob Weir, the unfortunate recent passing of Phil Lesh. But when Jerry died, the door opened for all of these bands in Mike's book. And the recurring theme, and I know I said this already, but as I went through this book, it was amazing to see these comments of, I won't forget in this book the role John Popper took when he was in high school. This man was in about 5 different bands. Blues Traveler was just kind of a thought. They were called the Blues Band at that point. And then they figured out, you know what, let's take this music and let's take it a step further. And I think that's what they did, man. You know, you look at bands like Phish and Widespread Panic, Martin Medeski and Wood, Disco Biscuits, all these bands, they've taken a certain avenue and they've made it their own. They've gone off on this ride. And the Dead did it. The Dead showed you don't have to be indebted to your record company. The Dead said, screw it, we're out of here. They didn't do any of that. You know, Mike had alluded also to Phish and why they didn't sell more CDs. Well, I'll tell you why they didn't sell more CDs. The CDs suck. But what you want to see is Phish in concert. The vibe, the people, everything that Phish or anybody else brought into the music, the energy was there. I'm going to see Widespread Panic in 2 or 3 weeks up in Boston, and I'll tell you, I can't wait to see Jimmy Herring up there playing that guitar because that man just beat cancer. A lot of these jam bands are now going through challenges, but ultimately it's about the music. And, you know, I could go on and on about Phish and the Dead and Widespread Panic. I was just at Phish this past weekend up in New York. 3 of the most epic shows I've ever been to. And for those of you in the crowd that if you go to see any band and they're playing on a Sunday night, here's a saying I'll leave you with. Never miss a Sunday show. And that goes for anybody. Something magical happens on Sundays. I don't know what it is, but if you were in SPAC on Sunday, you felt the magic. I see this guy grinning and smiling at me. I'm thinking he was there. Yeah, man. And the vibe, the music, the people, that's what it's about. It's about the people. And these guys in these bands, read Mike's book. They all, every one of them, my main influences, the Dead, Zeppelin, Floyd. You can't pick 3 better right there, I don't think. But, you know, Mike, with the way that these bands have progressed, man, it's unbelievable. I mean, you've got like bands like Widespread Panic. What are they on, 30, 35 years now? I mean, these bands are now mainstays.
I have a confession for you.
I'm listening.
Are you ready?
Okay.
I don't know if you can handle it.
Oh, boy.
I like their studio albums.
And that's okay, brother. Anyone who likes the Dead studio albums, that's okay too.
No, I was talking more about Phish.
Oh, I know
and
you
Panic.
were.
Okay, yeah.
They're not bad.
No, but seriously, yeah. Look, you bring up a lot of points. A great point that I think continues to traverse and evolve is this notion of community that, you know, the Dead certainly had back then, definitely had in the early 90s. These acts knew the power of community and fandom and the DIY ethos. Like none of these acts came from music industry backgrounds. Like their parents weren't in it. They may have played music, but they weren't like, you know, they weren't like pushed along. It was really just a bunch of kids who were young and just hell-bent on writing their own material and getting it out there, booking their own shows, calling up, saying, can we play? And just really trying to, you know, hit that as hard as possible. There's a really good good chapter in there about how, you know, Phish was doing really well in the late 80s up here, and Panic was doing very well in the same time frame in the South, and they just essentially connected and joined forces, and it was like, you you want to do a run up here in the Northeast, you open for us, and then we will do the same in the South. We'll open for you, because they knew that Panic couldn't call a promoter in Boston or Burlington and say, "Yeah, let us play. Do you have a CD? No. Are you on the radio? No. Do you have any fans up here? No."
Not really.
So, and the vice versa, the same thing. So, but if Panic is saying, yeah, I can bring in all these people in Charleston, South Carolina, they drink beer, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, yeah, come this weekend. Okay, great. And they knew them. Oh, okay, well, this band from Vermont, Phish, we're friends with them. They're going to open for us. Okay, whatever. And then they would have their mailing lists out and grab email, not emails, maybe emails, mailing addresses,
Literally mailing
addresses where they would then collect that and start to, again, DIY market from their home operations.
Yep.
And, that really, hooked people. There's a lot in there too about the networks that people created in the early online days, in the news groups, and the very early versions of Reddit. Was very active with the Dead, and then it morphed into there's activity with Phish and a couple of these other acts. And you went to college back then, and you were able to, with your tuition, you got an internet account. Right? And it was at the time what was considered a high-speed internet account. It wasn't dial-up. You weren't dialing up from your dorm room. And, I would do that. I would not email my professors, but I would use that to connect with other fans who would send me music, and then I would spread it around the community in Blacksburg, Virginia, and then they would spread it. And so it was this very, it was just a very ripe, organic community that the bands themselves knew was existing, and they certainly fostered it. JB from Panic, he was like, we recorded shows and we sent them out to fans. We knew the power of that.
Yep. Well, Mike, real interesting. You've got some tapes here. And back in the day, anyone who was an older Deadhead, you knew getting tapes in the mail, we trusted each other, and you'd send someone a list, and you'd be like, we'll see what happens. And then all of a sudden, 2-3 weeks later, in-show 10 Maxell tapes in your inbox at home or your mailbox, and there was nothing more exciting than to look at someone's handwriting and Scarlet Fire, Estimated Eyes, hell yeah. And, it was stuff like that. And I see these old tapes, and it brings back a ton of memories. I've got a case in my basement, and back in the day, I had just about every Grateful Dead show, Jerry Band show that I could get my hands on. And to this day, I still have those, because I said to myself, I looked at the artwork that I created when I was in college on these little covers that I made, and I said to myself, man, my handwriting was cool. These pictures are cool. I'm never going to play these again because they're probably all stuck together now, but I'm keeping them just for the nostalgia part of it. I look at an old show and the memories it brings back to me. But, all these bands, and Mike said it earlier, is community. And we got a little community right here, man. And there's a community at Bright Ideas. There's a community wherever we go, right? If you're at your favorite bar, restaurant, whatever it may be. But it was that community where we're all gathering for a single purpose, to go hear Widespread, to go hear Phish, or whoever was playing, man. It didn't matter. But when you pulled into that parking lot and you looked around, you knew we're amongst friends, man. This is awesome. And everybody was there for the experience, the music. Now, people will say, oh, yeah, Matt, it was the drugs. No, man, it is not about the drugs at all. None of these bands. If you partake in whatever extracurriculars you like to do, that's your choice. And if it makes the music better for you, wonderful. But here's something I did back in the day. I saw the Dead over 225 times, and I am not lying to you when I say this. My first 100 shows, dead sober. And you want to know why I did that? I needed to make sure I loved the music as much as I thought I did, and I didn't want weed or anything else to influence me and say, yeah, this is great. No, it was great without that. And if you go to these shows today, these bands care about your experience. Watch these light shows. Watch what these bands who were bar bands. I saw Blues Traveler, Panic, and Phish in Northampton. I saw Phish at Sheehan's Cafe. I don't know if anybody here remembers Sheehan's, but they played in the damn basement. And that's where Phish played. I saw Phish at the Armory in Greenfield, and I will never forget this, 12/5/91, one of the most epic shows ever. I turned to all my friends that night and I said, I hope you all enjoyed this. This is the last time we see Phish in a little venue like this. I said, it's civic centers and stadiums. After that, literally within a year, eruption, and you couldn't see Phish anywhere but a civic center or bigger. Panic, Disco Biscuits, Martin Medeski and Wood, all these dudes, they love what they're doing. They want to make this magical music, create this experience. And if you read Mike's book and you hear what these guys said when they're 16, 17, 18 years old, what I loved about their comments, they were so, and we all did this at one point, they were so naive. Young, bold, brash, we know what we're doing. They didn't. But all they knew what to do was go up there and play their heart out every night, because they knew as the people see the music, if one person leaves that show and goes to his buddy's house and says, dude, I just saw this band last night, Widespread Panic, they blew my mind, you gotta go. That's the best advertising right there. Any business owner knows that as well. Word of mouth. And Mike's book is literally first page to last page, nearly word of mouth of these guys. All the comments from Chan, from Blues Traveler, that are in this book, it just, I'm sitting there as I'm reading this, and I felt literally like I was talking to, whether it was Popper or Chan or Jimmy Herron or Trey or anybody that is in this book. That's the magic that these guys bring. And if you haven't seen any of these bands, I'm telling you, man, check them out. If you just want to go and smile and have a great time and think, like any band, these guys all just started in high school. They accidentally got together. They found each other. They found a groove. And they were like, let's ride with this. And they did. And I'll tell you, I think all of us are more fortunate that the Dead were here, all these bands. You know, someone said to me after Jerry died, and they were so sad. And I was like, I get it. I'm sad too. But I said, don't be sad that it's over. Be glad that it happened. And those of us that were fortunate enough to be alive during that era, if you got to see the Dead or Phish or any of these bands, it's a privilege. And that's the way I look at it. I say to myself every day, man, I am the luckiest guy on the planet. I was alive when Jerry Garcia was alive. I'm alive when Phish is killing it. I'm alive when Widespread Panic is rolling through the United States, crushing everywhere they go. But if you really want to feel what these bands were in the beginning, read Mike's book. It is just, it's going to give you goosebumps when you read it, especially if you were part of that scene and part of that music. I can ramble forever. I know my two guys right over here know that. So, Mike, I'm going to turn it right back to you to lead me back in, brother.
Okay, so the community thing, people have been asking me lately what I think about like music today, you know, and like what's going on with music today, and you know, ticket prices are really high, and what's up with that, and you know, is it all going to crap, you know, and you know, the way I have been looking at it as, you know, the bands in this book were very, very active with their fans and with community, and then you kind of started to see it trickle over into a lot of other fandom. You know, I've been to shows, Taylor Swift and Olivia Rodrigo recently,
Why not?
and they have fandom that is very, very connected, and they're very, very connected to each other, right? You know, there's stories in the New York Times about people traveling last summer and the summer before. They were planning their time off to see Taylor Swift, traveling, going to Europe, going here and there. And, you know, sometimes they'd make comparisons to, you know, Dead fans traveling or Phish fans, but they would do things with their fans, like they would make bracelets, and then you would go up to a random stranger and trade, you would trade bracelets for songs and that sort of stuff. So people were like asking about those sorts of things. And, you know, in the jam scene, there's like newer acts like Goose and Billy Strings and a band from Connecticut, Eggy, they're all doing very similar things without the things that were happening in the 90s with the radio and Tower Records and, you know, record labels and that sort of thing. But, you know, they all know that creating this bond between their fans it's just lasting. It's just making things lasting. And when so many things right now are dominated by algorithms and feeds, and you know, like this playlist was created by this robot because it knows that you searched this, and this ad is served to you because, like, all of that stuff takes away your essentially your autonomy. Okay. Going to see a show, going to be around people that love the same thing that you love, and you're gonna lose your mind over for 2 to 3 hours. Going to a place like this and seeing a band on like a Wednesday or a Friday night with the people that live in your town, like that's small. What I'm referring to is big, SPAC is big, but like they are creating these moments that I think are becoming extremely important to people.
Mike, I couldn't agree more, man. Where I find most of my happiness these days is local bands. There's a theater in East Hampton, the Marigold, and there's a theater right here at Bright Ideas. The music that comes into this brewery, the music that goes up to Marigold, East Hampton is a jammin' music scene right now. I think it's actually taking over from Northampton, to be honest with you. But the music that is out there, and it's not just hippie jam bands, there's everything. You know, Mike just mentioned Taylor Swift. I will tell you this, man. I was blown away seeing on Reddit how many people were at a Taylor Swift concert and how in control that crowd was. It really blew me away. Taylor Swift, hey, you know what? They've likened her to the Grateful Dead a little bit. one thing that's ironic about Taylor Swift, and I just chuckle when I see this, is apparently Taylor wrote a song that's what, 8-9 minutes long, right? And there was all these comments on Reddit. Nobody can play an 8 or 9 minute song except Taylor Swift. I very quickly answered that Reddit and I said, Grateful Dead, Phish, the Allman Brothers, check it out. They all did this long before Taylor Swift, and they did it maybe 3 or 4 times longer than what Taylor did. Nonetheless, still pretty awesome. But it's those crowds. It's what we go. We go for the magic. That's what we go for. You go to these shows and you walk out and you say to your buddy, man, I can't believe they played X, Y, or Z. And that's what brings the happiness right there. You'd go to a show saying, I really hope. And then you hear it. And then you're like, man, they knew I wanted to hear that. That's how we kind of looked at it. Oh, Jerry's looking right at me. No, he's not. But it looks like it. And you felt it. And it made you feel awesome at a show that all of a sudden Trey, Jerry, Jimmy Heron, whoever is looking at you. Again, they're not. Maybe they are, but they're probably not. But it's our interpretation of our vibe at this music and the love and the happiness that it brings us. And I think you can find that in almost all music. I'm not saying today's music is wonderful. There's some stuff that's good. There's some stuff that I'm not a big fan of. But if you look at music generically, I just think music itself brings such happiness and magic, relief. It does a lot for people. It can heal people. Music is a medicine, and I really believe that. I need music every day. The first thing I do when I get up, music. No matter what it is, man, I'll just put on my YouTube thing, but, and I'm going to let Mike go back to this in a second, but he also had just mentioned algorithms. Man, I think that is the worst thing that has ever happened. Nothing is more satisfying than back in the day, putting a song list together. You heard the song come on the radio, you quickly got your tape recorder right there because that was the first time you heard Clapton sing Cocaine and you wanted that song. I'll never forget having my tape recorder right next to the speaker on Rock 102, and they would tell you, hey, in 2 minutes, we've got this song coming on. I'd be like, oh yeah, I need that song. But there's something about creating your own list. And I will say there's something about these algorithms. It's kind of cool. You grab 3-4 songs, it gives you 12 others that fit. But overall, it was just that love of creating the music, making that list, and being proud, putting that on when you're at a show, going, oh yeah, that's my set list right there, or whatever. But, Mike, I think the book covers all of that and then some, and then really brings it to a level where it brings us right into today.
It does. Does anybody have questions that they want to ask? Small crowd. Yeah, hi.
Just say, ask people, what's one of your favorite shows and why? Could be because it was great with your friends, maybe you got it, music, you got your favorite song. What's a favorite song, favorite show you've been to and why? 90s, now, whatever.
Great. I think it was probably Halloween '95, Phish's Halloween '95. I was there in Chicago and had amazing seats, and I did the Who's Quadrophenia, and it was one of those instant legendary moments of the band's career. And I felt like, my first show was in fall '94, and I'd seen him I got the bug pretty quickly. But that was like that was probably the first show that I felt like I had experienced like a historic moment for the band. And then a couple months later, I was at the Garden for New Year's '95, and it was the same feeling. So yeah, like that right around that time was just fantastic. And I did see, I don't, I it was I don't want to say it was like a happy accident, but it wasn't an accident. I did it on purpose. But I saw a lot in 1997, and that's typically considered their best year. So I was fortunate to see a lot that year, and it was, yeah, it was, yeah, amazing memories, seeing the country, like just, figuring things out, Yahoo MapQuest printouts,
Oh yeah.
guessing, asking strangers where to go. After one of those summer '97 shows, I remember we were driving from St. Louis to Tinley Park, Chicago, and we saw camping, and there was a whole stream of Phish people doing what we were doing, like driving a couple hours on the way to Chicago, and we saw a stream pull off at this that said camping, and so we just followed them, and it seemed like it was this massive field. It was pitch black. It was like 1 a.m. It was a massive field, and there was all these like Phish kids putting up tents and all that sort of stuff. But in the distance, you could see there was like I don't know if this is the right word, but it was like a homestead farmhouse, right? And like I was like, we were just trying to throw up a tent as fast as possible, and it's kind of like a scramble. It wasn't very organized. There was no cost, but we were just like going with the flow. And we got our tent up and got in, and about 30 minutes later, we heard these shotguns go off. Like shotguns were going off, and like we got out of the tent. We were like, "What is happening? Like, what is happening?" And they kept going off, and you heard these like people screaming, and it was the people that owned this house, this old farmhouse, basically saying like, "Get out of here." Like what is happening, and get out. And so like everybody then mad scrambled to pack up their car, and we did, and we slept at a rest stop that night in the car. But I don't know why my mind went there, but that was you know
That was the one.
that's the things that I guess happened. Yeah, New Year's '95, and we stayed in a really terrible place up north, and would take the Metro North down each day. It was like $50 a night. It was we were like 20-year-old kids that had to stretch our buck. Um, but yeah, a couple days after that shotgun thing, we were up in Darien, New York, and we were going through the turn, like the toll booth that they had on the New York Thruway or something, and right behind us comes this massive school bus. It was painted all psychedelic. It was the Further bus.
Oh yeah.
And so the Further bus went through the toll booth, like literally right behind our car. Like I'm like snapping pictures, and then it's Wavy Gravy's bus, right?
Ken Kesey.
Yeah. And like he was at that show. He was going to the show, and he actually, like, you can go listen to it. like Phish, I think, found out that he was in the parking lot. Like, we have pictures of him in the parking lot, and Phish found out that he was there, and they did this like this wild, really trippy thing with him on stage that night in the second set. Like, total WTF. Like, when everybody's leaving, they're like, what is happening? And then we went to Limestone, Maine for the Great Wint Festival, but we went through Canada. We drove through Montreal and stopped at Montreal, and the drinking age there was 18. We had a day off. Went to, 20-year-old kid, went to a really terrible strip club at noon, and then kept going, moseyed on, kept sleeping in the car, and then we came back into the U.S. through the very, very tip top of Maine. But it was just like, like untouched part of the world. And I still, I was driving down through Vermont this morning and driving into North Mass, and there's still a lot of like really gorgeous untouched places that exist in most states that, people are like, why, you're still like driving in New Hampshire to see a band? Like, how old are you? Like, what are you doing? And I'm just like, I don't know. Like, you get to see parts of the world that you would never see, and you get to talk to people and experience people of these communities, which we were just talking about, that is, it's worth your time.
Yeah.
It's worth knowing. It's worth getting out of your bubble.
Yeah.
I think that, look, I love the internet. I just said I've been on the internet since like 1994, obsessing, but like, I'd also, get out. And I think, getting out is a good thing this day more than ever. Other questions, other thoughts, other comments? Yes.
Getting back to the book a little bit, do you have any stories that kind of came about while writing it? Like anything that is particularly your favorite in here, or anything that kind of happened along the way that you would want to share as far as like, well, I had no idea, or this is kind of funny, or anything like that?
Well, I don't want to ruin any of like the stories that are in there because they're so good, right? But there's a lot. One of the things that I thought would be good to talk to people about, and it actually was extremely better, was there was this old hotel in New York, kind of near here, and it's called Arrowhead Ranch.
Oh yeah.
And David Graham, who is Bill Graham's son, who is managing Blues Traveler, him and a few people decided that they wanted to put concerts on there in the summer, and and it only lasted one summer, and it was like, the inmates were given the keys to the jail type situation, where these kids were just putting on shows in 1991 and hiring bands and hiring these jammy bands and hoping the cops didn't come. And people would, it was like early camping days, so people would camp all weekend. And it was a complete free for all. And they thought it was going to be like they had plans to blow it up to make it this really big destination place that had Bill Graham's stamp on it. And then 2 or 3 months after their last show, he died in a helicopter accident, and it completely like fizzled, like immediately. But it's kind of a wild chapter. It's great.
Were there any moments along the way as you were writing it and you made connections that surprised you? Like, oh, I can't believe this person talked to me, or like, things that you didn't expect to happen that did.
I mean, the stories that they were saying just were completely. I would just remember hearing them, and I was like, nobody, I had no idea about this, like these sorts of things, and it's a lot of like really kind of inside baseball type things at the time that that no one's really gonna know, and there's only so much distribution of information about the bands. You had their newsletters. You might have had if you were lucky, a Rolling Stone article. Maybe you heard a radio interview. Maybe you heard something on they're just the information that it exists today in the last 15 years completely didn't exist then. So I think a lot of the stories that are in there, are just I hope that they're unknown. But talking to Trey about recording their first record, and he's a super big gearhead, and I had talked to the producer already, so I was like, I heard this, and then 15 minutes later he's winding up himself talking about like this one moment when they were recording Esther, and like how like they were like working on like a 16 track or a 24 like stuff like that. I'm just kind of like pinching myself, but I know that if you read it, it should give a good portrait of how people worked to make and create art that was meaningful to them and meaningful to a lot of other people when there was a lot of other forces that were telling them different or telling them no. There's some stories in there of record labels abandoning people, saying you're going to be the best, and then like forgetting about them. And it's fascinating to me, and it's fascinating. People have moments in their lives where people tell them no, gatekeepers say no, and you're forced. What do you do? And for all of these acts, whether they were told yes or no, they kept going and kept doing what they thought their fans, their community would love, and they're still doing it today. I mean, so I loved that part of it, and that part hopefully will shine through for people.
Got a question for you guys. Communities come up a lot, and I think in the Jamband scene, part of that community that was one of my first experiences going to police sporting goods and seeing Phish was a shakedown lot. And what's your favorite part of that little microcosm of the scene, this ecosystem attaching to the music? Either of you guys that already.
Yeah, I was enamored with it. I remember seeing the Dead at RFK Stadium in DC, and it would be like 4 or 5 times as big as what you see at a Phish lot today. It would be massive, and so seeing that there was a community around the music, but also around the fandom, and that's essentially what it was, and how the band the bands would let it essentially go. Phish I was there, like Phish certainly tried to shut down the selling of bootleg merchandise in the 90s. But I think they were very protective of the logo. So if you put anything with the logo on it, you would get it taken. But if you used a song title and used a lyric and riffed off something, or used Calvin and Hobbes and had like a quote on it from that would be fine. But ultimately, I think they were like this weird microcosm of the music industry that was like, this is good for us. We're not spending any money to make this stuff. People are wearing it all around. It has this really interesting hidden meaning for people. And when they see it on the street or whatever, they connect to it. And it's like, oh, you're my friend. I don't know you. Like, but we have literally something in common because you're wearing this Chief Wiggum shirt that says Maka Super Policeman on it, which I had, which was like the parking lot shirt of summer '97, and that meant something to people. But yeah, I think they of course wouldn't stop it. It's like, oh, you're gonna do bumper stickers and it's gonna say "Sharing in the Groove," which is where that title for the book came from. Like, yeah, it's a line in a song, but it was, to me, is more of an like an ethos that was running through the scene. And like, if you had this bumper sticker on your car and you're driving down the highway, you could be like, oh. But also, weirdly too, like if you had like like a Steely or like a Phish logo on your car, like cops knew that and they could pull you over. But if you had like these other hidden things, like shit, like the cops wouldn't know what that meant. And so, you could tell other people about your fandom without like burning yourself, basically. So.
I think the shakedown, Mike hits it there. But the Dead shakedown was bigger than anything you've seen or could imagine. In literally anything that you could be looking for would be in shakedown. You could find it. You had to listen sometimes very astutely as people walked by you, because you might hear, hey, ooh, that's what I wanted. Mike also made a great point where, when I was seeing the Dead and I was in shakedown and everything, anything that had a logo on it, Mike's right, man. The copyright police were out there, and in the Dead community, people would alert the vendors. There were certain sayings that we would say to alert, and that helped those folks. Regarding bumper stickers, believe it was about 1987, the Dead released an album that, in a lot of Deadheads' opinion, ruined the scene. I don't think it did. I think it brought in a new energy. It was the album In the Dark. And what's the irony of that album, there wasn't one darn new song on that album. Every one of those songs had been in rotation for 5, 6, 7 years. They just finally decided to release it. What that did to the Dead community, speaking of community, is it brought in a whole new wave of Deadheads to our private party. We felt, and it sounds a little stuck up, and it is, we felt our party got crashed. And we called them bucket heads, we called them touch heads. And then one day I said to myself, I was like, hey, wait a minute. I was 18 once. I showed up at a show, and maybe that's what the older head said about me. So instead of pushing these people away because they had a brand new Touch of Grey t-shirt on, cheesy, but nonetheless, they were there. And if they weren't there just to party, but they were there for the music, all right, we're halfway there. And then I said to myself one day, I'm like, damn, a lot of us deadheads are older. These 18, 19, 20-year-old kids coming in, I said, this music's gonna live forever. I have a 18-year-old son. His two favorite bands, The Grateful Dead and Phish. He's 18 years old. When he was a kid, that's all I played in the house. Dead, Johnny Cash, all the good stuff to bring him up the right way. And then one day I hop in his truck and he's got a chalk dust torcher burning from I don't know where. And I said to him, I go, when the hell did you start listening to Phish? He goes, well, Dad, I've been looking at your stuff, listening. And he goes, listen, man, it's great stuff. So here's an 18-year-old kid joining the community and bringing all his friends in as well. The way I look at it is all of these bands, whether they're still here with us or eventually when they're not, they will be here forever. I really believe that. And that's where, again, we can go back to community, is the community that these bands have created. Mike nailed it. Nothing makes me smile more than when I'm driving down the road and the truck in front of me has a Phish sticker, a Dead sticker. I just smile, and Mike already said it. I go, that's a friend right there. I could pull into the gas station right up next to this man or woman, get out of the car, compliment them on their sticker. Instantly, we're friends. Instantly. It's because of the community that's been developed over the years. That love, that magic. We all know what that steely means. We all know what that cool Phish sticker where it's a fish, but it says Phish with the little bubbles. You see that, it makes you feel good. Or if you're not ahead, you're like, they got drugs in their car. But, and I'll leave with this last point and I'll turn it back to Mike. Regarding stickers, I lived that nightmare. It was 1987 and 88. If you had a Dead sticker, especially a Dead sticker on your vehicle, that was grounds to be pulled over. I thought about that back in the day, and I was like, isn't this my freedom of speech right here, man? I can put a sticker on my truck. But, so I just smartly, I'd leave the sticker there, but whenever I was traveling, I'd be like, you know what? Either it's very well hidden or I'll just get it there. And that was what became of the community. And we knew at Shakedown, whatever I needed, I was gonna go find it in the community out there. So I mean, stickers, community, young people at these older bands, nothing makes me happier than to see a 18-year-old or a younger kid at a Dead and Company show, at a Phish show, at the Marigold Theater, seeing a Grateful Dead cover band. That says to me, that kid was brought up right. He or she knows what's going on, and their parents probably know what's going on, or somebody in their community has pointed them in the right direction. And that always makes me happy.
I have a few books for sale. You can Venmo me if you'd like, tax-free, and happy to sign anything. Matt has a gift bag for one person that can identify this deep cut.
Let's do it.
Touch your crank. This is not your first show. And hold the mic up to you. Should be able to.
Oh wait, this is the wrong song. Okay, this song, yeah.
Fish.
No? Oh my God, okay.
Let's go. I'm rusty.
All right, 1 second, hold on.
from 96. It's from
It's not from 96, but that's close.
Oh,
95. Right?
Yeah.
oh, all right, man. Man knows the sound. I like it.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, damn. Nicely done.
Yes.
Nicely
Done.
If I could. Yeah, but what show? That's what